Hi, I'm Christina, and I'm a summer student here at the Thorold Museum, and this is my project on the Great Fires of 1847 and 1866 and how they helped develop Thorold's fire department. One of the first well-documented major fires in Thorold took place on March 18th, 1847. So the frame store that sat on what is now the northeast corner of Front and Claremont Street was discovered to be on fire. And without a formal firefighting organization, the townspeople began to fight the fire themselves. In the end, all the buildings on the east side of Front Street, as far north as the corner, were burnt to the ground. So with this instance, as well as some other past fires that left bad damage in Thorold, the citizens began to think of how they could form some sort of fire company. So after 6 years of planning, on August 29th, 1853, the Fire Protection Hose Company was officially organized. So unfortunately, this was a very short-lived organization that lasted just about 21 years. Unfortunately, the organization fell apart due to poor planning and financial issues. They did not have a whole ton of funding. And unfortunately, these days, we don't really know too much about this organization. For example, there is no longer a list of members in existence. So the image you see on the right is actually not of the original Fire Protection Hose Company. This is actually a picture of its successor, and we will get into that in just a little bit. On Sunday, April 29th, 1866, at about 2:30 p.m., a fire broke out on the west side of Front Street, just south of Lot 55. So it's believed that the fire actually started in James Miller's tailor shop and spread rapidly to the buildings on either side. So both of these buildings were destroyed despite the efforts of the village to put out the fire with water from the canal. So at the time, the Fire Protection Hose Company was pretty small, so they did need to ask help from civilians as well as the St. Catharines Fire Department. So a lot of those civilians had actually been at church at the time, so they left early to help aid putting the fires out. So around 3 p.m., firefighters from St. Catharines were called to help put out the fires, and they arrived just in time to stop the flames from spreading to the City Hotel. So the City Hotel sat where the Moose and Goose is today. By the end of the day, St. John's Episcopal tenements were destroyed. Some 50 families were left homeless, and the total damage was estimated at $250,000, or about $4,939,858.49 in 2024. So, unfortunately, at the time, very few property owners or tenants were fully insured, and some had none at all, so pretty devastating for them. In all, 40 buildings had been destroyed, and one woman was reported to have been frightened to death. The St. Catharines Daily Journal wondered if Thorold would ever recover, and luckily it did. So Front Street was actually rebuilt in the 1860s and 1870s, and most of the buildings we see today are actually constructed in brick dated from this time period. So after this major fire, the citizens of Thorold reignited serious conversations about the importance of quality methods of fighting fires. So at the time of this fire, Thorold only had one single-hand engine. So this event made the city realize that they really need to invest in the fire department to prevent anything like this happening again. So just as a visual, this is picture on your right here. This is kind of what Thorold's single-hand engine may have looked like. This picture is not from Thorold, but gives kind of an idea of what it would look like. So later in the following year, in 1867, the current fire protection company had asked the city council for 10 more men and offered an increased wage of $4 a year. So this would be equivalent to $2,125 in 2024. Unfortunately, though, on December 22nd, 1874, after disputes over the quality of the fire protection tools, and the company disbanded again. So actually, on the following day, December 23rd, City Council put together a new and improved fire protection company that became known as Fire Protection Fire Hose Company No. 1. This new company had about 50 firefighters, and unfortunately, just like the previous fire department, there is no list of original members known to exist. But we do know that a considerable amount of the members were elected the same evening that they had created the company, and that several citizens were elected as honorary members. At subsequent meetings, a uniform was decided upon, and resolutions were passed to build the fire department. The Protection Fire Hose Company No. 1's fire department resided on 12 Albert Street West from 1878 until 1966, when they moved.